from CBS Sports, our buddy Jason LaCanfora. How are you, Jason?
I'm all right, buddy. How are you?
What happened in Cleveland?
Reality, common sense, rational football decision making. Eventually, that's got to carry the day. And
but what happened? Was it so? Why did Haley have to go too?
You have to ask. Look, Jimmy Haslam and the way that they've handled hirings and firings since he took over, I can't explain a lot of it. None of it, or a majority of it, will never make sense to me. How he's reached conclusions and decisions. Nothing will ever be more baffling than telling John Dorsey, you got to keep Hugh Jackson for a year, knowing you're drafting a quarterback, if not first overall, then fourth overall, and dealing with the reality that there's no way what could Hugh Jackson have done to save his job to make John Dorsey say, okay, I was stuck with this guy and foisted upon me who I wouldn't have kept otherwise, but now I'm going to keep him for multiple years to steward this young potential franchise quarterback, even though it's been a failure the last 2 years. It was never set up to work. Anybody you brought in there, when you've got Hugh Jackson, right, who the one thing he really wants to do is call plays and run the quarterbacks, and now instead of firing him, which was more than called for, you decide we're going to take that away from him and then see how he handles that. And you've got a guy with a combination of, egomaniacal tendencies coupled with incredible insecurity. And now you're taking his baby away from him, and you're bringing in somebody else with very different ideas who played against that offense last year and saw firsthand what an abject failure it was when Haley was in Pittsburgh, and another strong-willed guy. And you put that together, and you think that ticking time bomb is going to last.
I know. And then I just played from Hard Knocks a moment where it was laid bare for the entire free football world to see. Do you think that Mayfield was asked his 2 cents?
No, I don't think so. I haven't heard that.
Okay.
And that would be real. He got thrust into the middle of this. Hugh Jackson created a tug of war where there didn't need to be one, and now Mayfield's in the middle of it. And that was the final blow. And if the football people in that organization had their way, this change would have been made the previous Monday. But the Haslams have this allegiance and alliance and loyalty to Hugh, and they didn't think it was, a fireable offense, even with 3 wins in 2.5 years at that time. But as it festered, and everybody knew the quarterback's going to be asked about this Wednesday, and now he's dragged down in the muck, and really, what for? Because Hugh's not going to be coaching him in 2019 anyway.
Jason
and really, neither would Haley.
I
was
guess
going to be somebody else coming in.
I guess, and now Greg Williams. Well, let's move on because we've got a trade deadline to discuss. Jason LaCanfora here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who do you think is the biggest name that gets moved by the end of the day?
Biggest? I don't think it's a blockbuster. I don't think it's Odell Beckham type or anything like that. I think, a lot of the usual suspects. I think Jamie Collins goes back to New England. I think Janoris Jenkins ends up maybe in Kansas City or maybe Pittsburgh, one of these corner-needy teams. I think Howie has a trick up his sleeve. If it ends up being Le'Veon Bell, then I guess that would certainly constitute
Howie Roseman of the Eagles is what you mean. Howie Roseman of the Eagles is who you're referring to.
Yes, the Eagles GM. He loves this time of year. He loves the wheel and deal. He's always open for having people run ideas by him, and he has some obvious needs. Does he go and we've been talking. He's been looking a lot on corners and wide receivers, and then obviously he did his work on Bell early. But does he look at his roster now with Lane Johnson and Peters, his bookend tackles banged up, and say, let me see what it would take to get Kelechi Osemele, who could start at 4 different offensive line positions for most teams. So really anywhere but center. So I think there's some moves to be made. The Broncos, John Elway has to make at least one trade. I would say there's 3 trades he probably needs to make, but I think he'll make a few. So
as a seller, right? Not to try and improve a situation to win this year, correct?
Come on.
No, I just need to
totally, yeah.
throw it out there.
They definitely, yeah. If they should be a team that is shedding salary, acquiring future draft capital, and putting themselves in position to get a quarterback, a young potential franchise quarterback next year. I don't think there's any other road to recovery there, and people in their hearts know it. Will their minds allow them, though, to finally say, this juggernaut that we built is dead. That version of the Broncos can't be revived. We need to create a new version of the Broncos around this quarterback to be drafted later.
Jason LaCanfora here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ask him the poll question, Chris. Go for it there.
All right, Jason, which team at the deadline needs the most help? Chiefs, Cowboys, Eagles, Packers, Texans.
We just chose those 5. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Packers, to me, Le'Veon Bell to the Packers, just as a football move, made infinite sense to me from the giddy-up. It made sense when Rodgers was hobbling around on one leg. It makes just as much sense now that he's finally off the injury report for the most part, although still wearing that brace. They haven't been in it at all. Doesn't mean they couldn't jump in it at the last minute, but you thrust a dynamic element into that offense with a quarterback like that, and maybe it truly does, kindle something there. The Cowboys already made their move, and I think it was a short-sighted move. I don't see that working. And look, the Chiefs adding a corner would make a lot of sense. They took a chance on Revis, low risk last year. Do they, again, Janoris Jenkins, Garyon Conley, somebody they think could be a bit of a press man corner for them, which is obviously so important in Bob Sutton's scheme. We don't know if Eric Reid, I'm told Eric Reid's coming back at some point. Nobody knows when. Justin Houston's been out. So, look, they're rolling without it, but, more is usually better, right?
I agree. I think the Chiefs need to make a move on the secondary. They need to make a move, and having seen the Eagles with my own 2 eyes, Corey Clement is a nice player. We saw what he did in the Super Bowl last year, and Josh Adams, who I called Jamal, much to the delight of all my haters in Philadelphia during the game on Sunday. Le'Veon Bell there. If this team wants to compete, well, they have to compete with the Rams. I mean, that's the team to beat in that conference right now. They need to get more points on the board, and right now they're scoring a touchdown fewer points this year than they did last year. Le'Veon Bell would be a terrific ad. What do you think it would cost to get him today?
I think a third-round pick at this point.
That's it?
Get the comp pick now versus a year from now when he leaves as a free agent. Originally, they were hoping for a 2. But the market never really developed. San Francisco, who had some initial interest, fell by the wayside. The Jets sniffed around, but that doesn't really make sense for them right now. And Howie was the guy who called the most early on and asked the most questions. And then he kind of went off, did his due diligence everywhere else. They played in London last week. He wasn't going to do anything then. And now they're waiting in that front office to see, does he call again? Knowing he's explored everything else and Le'Veon Bell for a 3 plus maybe a little something else, or maybe not even anything else. Does that wet his whistle? I mean, you can make the case. I mean, is it the chicken or the egg, though? Is it the offensive line at this point, or the running back? I mean, I know they do like Smallwood and they do like, Corey. Now, they're obviously not Le'Veon Bell, but they don't have infinite cap space and infinite finances either. So, if he can make one splash, does it make more sense for it to be, a corner or a special running back or an offensive, a top of best-of-breed offensive lineman? But I think he's doing something. I just don't see him sitting on his hands.
Last one for you, Jason. Has Jameis Winston, who has a $20.9 million option next year that becomes fact if he gets hurt this year, has he played his last game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I can't say that with certainty, Rich. I mean, Fitzmagic has a way of fading out. He's an older guy who's been banged up and could be injury-prone. And it's going to be an ownership call. When that money, which is only guaranteed for injury, is involved, the owners may put him in bubble wrap, or the owners might decide by December that, we're blowing this whole thing up. And maybe if Jameis Winston plays all right in December, it helps with some sort of trade value. And, we're probably moving on from our GM. We're probably moving on from our coach. And we don't care about the money right now. Let's see if we could prop up some value to give the next guys a head start, with whatever they want to do at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because right now, obviously, the division's not going to be won at 3-4, and the Saints looking as they have at 6-1. But you look at the wild card, they are just a game behind anybody who's sitting there, or a half game behind the Minnesota Vikings right now. I mean, it's entirely possible.
And they scored a ton of points with Fitz, and he brings Deshaun Jackson alive. He gets, he's clipped with the tight end. I mean, so yeah, they'll be given that shot. But 3 weeks from now, if there's a bunch of losses, then they've got to make the owners have to decide: are we willing to take the financial risk with the hope that not so much that it salvages Jameis's career there, but maybe he becomes something of an asset in somebody else's eyes.
Great chat, Jason. Have a good rest of your day. I'm sure it's be very, very busy. We'll chat soon.
It will be. Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.
That's Jason LaCanfora.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.